I found teenagerdom much more stressful than old age. Can you remember when you were a teenager? That was really stressful. You were quarrelling, at least I was quarrelling with my parents. I was in love with the wrong people. I didn't know where I was going. When you're young, you spend a lot of time worrying about what people will think. I do sometimes look at myself in the mirror and think, honestly, this is too much. You've got orange earrings the size of tennis balls on your ears. You've got these ridiculous glasses.
What is old?
I don't know what old is, except that it's liberating.
Hello and welcome to Ways to Change the World. I'm Krishnan Guru-Murthy, and this is the podcast where we talk to extraordinary people about the big ideas in their lives and the events that have helped shape them. My guest today is known to millions as a judge on the Great British Bake Off, but Prue Leith's influence stretches far beyond television, from founding a prestigious cookery school and building a Michelin-starred restaurant to shaping national conversations around food, education and public health. In her latest book, Being Old and Learning to Love It, she turns her attention to aging, writing candidly about life in her 80s, from love and loss to staying relevant and what it really means to grow older well. Prue, welcome. We begin this conversation usually with a question, which is, if you could change the world in any way, how would you change it?
Simple. I would make sure that every child at school learned to cook healthily and learned to eat it, so that they'd prepare it and eat it, and they'd end up loving healthy food. And if we could do that to a single generation of children, they would grow up liking healthy food and therefore eating it by choice. And they'd teach their children that way, and we'd solve the obesity problem.
I mean, you've been involved with Jamie's campaigns as well, haven't you?
Lots of campaigns.
I mean, this has been talked about for quite a long time now. I mean, is it just cost, do you think, that means we don't do it?
People think it's cost, but there are two things recently that have happened that will change it. And I really believe if this government sticks to what it says and the next government follows suit, we could actually see some change. First of all, the government has now set standards for food in schools. So you can't give children nothing but deep-fried food and sweet things. So that's one great thing. It puzzles me that it's taking them 7 years to implement it. I think they could do it overnight, because it's not huge changes. You're not asking children to eat horrible food. Anyway, so the food's going to be better. And the other thing is that there's a company which I have to quickly declare an interest, which is Leith School of Food and Wine. Leith's education is now it's not mine at all, but they have decided to spend all the money they make on giving free cookery lessons to primary school children in the state sector. So any school that doesn't charge fees can apply to have it. And what it is a really good screen with a curriculum and a teacher who's one of our chefs, who is so charismatic the kids do exactly what they're told. And all you need in primary school is a table and very simple equipment and very cheap ingredients. And they will learn to cook for nothing.
And how healthy is your own diet?
How healthy
is your own diet?
Oh, well, except that I drink too much.
Yeah.
No, I eat really healthily, and I always cook from scratch. I don't do any rules like avoiding carbs or measuring anything. I just make sure I eat the rainbow, lots of different coloured veg and stuff, and eat a lot of different things. I mean,
in your most recent, big famous incarnation, you've been associated with bakery,
with cake and
cakes.
Yeah, no, well,
and obviously your food life, is very, very broad and diverse. But that's what people think of you. When people think of Prue Leith, they probably think of cake.
They probably do.
And that is fundamentally unhealthy eating, isn't it?
If you eat nothing but cake, of course it's unhealthy. But a piece of cake every 3 days
But isn't sugar the thing that we've got to change people's attitudes towards?
Well,
from a treat to something that's actually really bad for you.
In a broad sense, we should eat much less sugar. But I don't think that I actually think baking is a terrific way into cooking. And once children get interested in cooking, or people get interested in cooking, it probably will start with a brownie or banana bread or something. So we'll probably start with something sweet. But once they get good at it and interested in it, they will start thinking about what's going into their bodies. They'll be interested in food. And then you start thinking, oh, veg is not so bad.
So, I speak as a parent, I suppose, which is that, when we teach our kids how to bake brownies and cakes and all the rest of it, we give them the sweet tooth.
Well, if you give them too much of it, but you don't have to give them nothing but sweet things to cook. I mean, it's much more satisfactory to make bread. I mean, children love making bread because it's magic. I mean, the fact that yeast grows is just so addictive. They love doing it. And if you haven't got time to make bread, then what about scones? You can do all sorts of things that don't have sugar.
And as you've got older, have you improved your diet? Do you eat deliberately healthily now because you're in your 80s?
No.
Or do you just eat the same way you always have?
No, I just eat less, I suppose, now because I suppose I need less. I sleep more, so I need less food. But I have never. I mean, I have, over my long life, I've been on all sorts of diets because I don't know a woman who doesn't think she needs to lose a stone. I've always wanted to lose a stone. So every now and again I've tried. Recently I've given up trying to lose a stone, and I stay pretty well the same weight all the time. And I eat what I want.
Yeah, so I have this argument with my mum because she says, well, I'm so old now that I just want to eat whatever I want, and that she's got an incredibly sweet tooth, so she just eats loads of really, really bad things. And I keep trying to say, yes, but she says, well, I'm going to die soon anyway. I said, but you don't want to die because you've been eating terrible things.
Yeah, well, I think it's a balance, isn't it? I mean, you don't want to make her life miserable if she only likes sweet food. But it is a mistake to eat nothing but sweet food. Of course it is. Your body is not built to cope with that much sugar. My husband did weight loss jabs, and he is still on them. He lost 2.5 stone, and he looks absolutely great. It didn't affect his appetite. He eats much less.
That's unusual, then.
Well, it did affect it in the sense that he doesn't want to eat so much, but he does still enjoy his food.
He enjoys the food, yes. Because you tried them as well, didn't you?
I was hopeless, but then I didn't obey the rules. I just had the jabs, and I didn't do what you're supposed to do, which is eat a lot of protein and make sure you have 1,500 calories a day. I was having about 200 calories, which is a starvation diet. And so my body just sort of shut down and said, well, I'm not losing a pound. So I lost nothing. I lost nothing in about 3 weeks of taking the damn jabs.
And did you take them while you were on Bake Off, or was it?
No. Since I left, and really it was ridiculous. It was just because it was working so well for my husband. I thought, oh well, I've always wanted to lose a stone. I'll have a go, and I didn't do it right. I didn't read the rules.
Yes.
But then I stopped, and I felt so much better without them. So now I've just given up.
Now let's talk about the book, Being Old and Learning to Love It. Mm-hmm. Why have you done? It's a sort of a series of sort of rants. Yes.
I'm afraid it is a series of rants. It's actually because I got so irritated with people going on in a sympathetic way about how terrible it is. Isn't it dreadful being old? And I thought, no, it's great. I mean, I'm really enjoying it. You have more time to do what you really like. It's accepted that you can have a sleep in the afternoon. I actually have my Prue's snooze written into my call sheet when I'm on television because I like to have a nap in the afternoon. I could never have done that years ago. And also there's great advantages to being old. You don't care what people think so much. So that's great. You think, oh, well, whatever.
But what is old? Define old.
Exactly. I don't know what old is because, except that it's liberating. I mean, you get to an age, let's say 70 or 75, in my case, 85, 86. I'm 86 now. Where it is liberating because you just think, oh, you don't care, and you do what you want, and you pick the jobs you want. I mean, I've just lived such a lucky life. I absolutely accept that lots of people have a horrible old age, and a lot of people are unhappy or lonely or not well. But I have been just extraordinarily lucky, and I'm extremely well. I'm very happy. And I'm having a great time.
Yeah, I mean, all of these supposed downsides to getting old are things that you basically address. But I mean, is it that you are just very lucky and very unusual and in a position where you've been incredibly successful, you've been, you're a brilliant businesswoman, and you're now at a stage in your later life where you have...
I'm old, darling. I'm old, yeah.
But what I mean is, like, you know, you can do what you want. You've made your money. You're happy.
Yeah.
You're in a relationship. You are the poster gran.
Poster gran, yeah, I like being poster gran.
For happy old age.
I agree.
How repeatable is it for most people?
Oh, well, I agree. It must be extremely irritating to have somebody preaching about how lovely old age is if your old age is not like that. But I do think that there's a... I mean, I don't want this to sound like a self-help book anyway. It's just as you say. It's my opinion of various things, like, for example, exercise. I mean, everybody always goes on about how
I enjoyed this bit.
How exercise has saved me. You know what? My advice about exercise is don't do it. It's so boring and it takes so much time. Just forget it. So I don't do any exercise.
Well, especially if you haven't done exercise all your life. That's why men drop dead on the golf course and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah, suddenly start doing it. But also, I think, I mean, I suppose I'm quite active anyway. I mean, I walk around a lot and I cook a lot, and you walk around the kitchen a lot. I think if I was measuring steps, I'd be probably... I don't think I'm doing 10,000 steps, but I'm probably doing 5,000, which is probably quite enough for my ancient age.
But physically, do you... I mean, you know, you obviously... I feel, I'm 56 and I feel the effects of age. So you must feel that you can't do things now that you used to be able to do 10, 15, 20 years ago.
My heart rather sinks when somebody says to me, we'll take the stairs. And I think, isn't there a lift? But I do take the stairs.
But how do you make sure that doesn't bother you or get you down? Which it does for many people, because they go, you know, I hate the fact that my body's giving up on me.
No, what's the point of hating it? I mean, you're not going to change it. I'm a great believer in looking forwards, not back. I mean, people shouldn't keen about what they've lost. They should be happy about what they've got. And, you know, I don't want to sound that I'm preaching anyway. I'm just saying I'm just very lucky. I do accept that it's 90% luck. And I have been lucky in all my life, and I'm still tremendously lucky because, as you say, I'm in love with my husband. I've had 2 happy marriages. My children are healthy. My grandchildren are healthy. I've got enough money. I don't have to work, but I love work, so I do. So I could not be luckier. I do accept that. But, you know, some people are just determined to be miserable, I think. Just occasionally you want to say. And I get cross with old people who are ungracious about being helped. You know, if somebody... My mum, when we were little, would be very strict about teaching us to be nice to old people. You know, we open the door for all ladies and open the door for anybody who's older than you, and pick up their bag and carry things for them and so on. But when she got old and I would pick up her bag, she'd say, I can manage, in a very indignant voice. Or she'd say, if you open the door for her, she'd say, you know, I can do that. Or I saw a woman on the tube, a young man, rather shy young man, stood up and asked her if she would like a seat. You know, she's a grey-haired old lady. And she looked at him indignantly. She said, what are you doing? She said, do you think I'm old or something? And the poor fellow will never, ever give anybody a seat again. I think sometimes old people are their own worst enemy.
And do you think old needs to be reclaimed as a positive thing?
Yeah.
I mean, as you say, if you call someone old, it's an insult.
I know. Well, when I wanted to call that book Being Old, which is what it is called, my publisher said, we can't call it Being Old. Old is such a negative word. And I said, why is it negative? You know, old age is no more stressful for most of us than... Can you remember when you were a teenager? That was really stressful. You were quarreling, or at least I was quarreling with my parents. I was in love with the wrong people. I didn't know where I was going. I mean, I found teenagehood much more stressful than old age. And, you know, for different stages of life have their stresses and strains. And old age is no different. Anyway, I said it was going to be called Being Old. They said it has to be being older, because that softens it. That's mealy-mouthed. It's silly. So it's called Being Old and Learning to Love It. That's their phrase to make it look softer. I
mean, you do address in it, you know, all the questions about health, dementia and senility, which you've got experience of, again, with your mother.
Yes, my mum was away with the fairies for many, many years. That's a tricky one, because I was giving a talk about the book to some literary festival, and a woman in the audience stood up and said she was really offended and hurt by the fact that I had used phrases like being away with the fairies or going doolally or bonkers or something. But those are the words that we all use, and so I had used them in the book. And actually, I mean it quite affectionately, because I adored my mother, but she was absolutely nuts by the end. And I mean, so much, but she gave us some amazing laughs. For example, one day, on her 80th birthday, we took her out to lunch, and she'd been a vegetarian for 40 years. So I had chosen a restaurant with a vegetarian menu and a carnivore menu, because my brothers both were meat eaters. So I got the vegetarian menu and gave it to my mum, and she read it. She said, "This is all vegetarian stuff." She said, "I don't want to, what's this? Why are you giving me a vegetarian menu?" And I said, "Mum, you've been a vegetarian for 40 years. She said, "Absolute nonsense, darling." She said, I don't want anything to do with those sandaled, green-eyed, freaky people. She said, "Give me a steak." And we gave her a steak. And
she ate it?
Yeah, loved it. So, I mean, there's some logic, some sort of daft logic still in people's heads that is lovely.
But with our ageing population, people living longer, more of these issues being more common, care being one of the biggest issues. Yeah. But we also have people like you, people with money, people who are healthy. We're still not tailored towards, an older society of reasonably healthy old people who've got money to spend, are we? I mean, you've kind of got round the deficiencies by doing it all yourself. So, you've become famous for your clothes, you're famous for your glasses, you've got your own range now. But our consumer society, if you like, is still all geared towards younger spenders, isn't it?
Yes, it is, which is pretty irritating. I mean, I think it's changing, though, because older people, I just said older then, old people are beginning to wear bright clothes. And I often have people say to me, "You're so brave because you wear orange and red and so on." I would love to. I used to wear red when I was young, but now I've turned 50 or 60 or something. It's not appropriate. And I want to bash their heads in. I mean, what do you mean it's not appropriate? Old people need more help than young people. If you're 25, you can dress in a sack and you'll look absolutely lovely. I mean, youth has its own beauty, doesn't it? However you think you look. If you're just young, you look great. But if you're old, you need a bit of help. And colour is one of the ways to do that.
But what would you say to marketing people and big brands about who they're aiming their money at? Do you think there is a big market of old people with money to spend who would like to spend it on these things?
I mean, my generation is the lucky generation that did pretty well and has money to spend. And there are lots of us. We're far more old people than there are young people. So they're crazy if they don't market to that group. But maybe the way is to market through their children, because the other thing that old people often have is a kind of feeling that they really shouldn't spend money on clothes because, this will see me out. I hear that phrase a lot. "Oh, I've got a very good coat and it'll see me out. I'd love a red one, but, my black one is still perfectly good." And there's something admirable about that sort of putting up with things in a way. But if it gives you real pleasure to have, I think buying a yellow coat or a red coat and wearing it in the winter is a positive mood lifter. It not only makes you feel happy to put it on, but it makes other people feel happy to see you in it. People are lifted up by colour. I mean, there's a reason we wear black at funerals. It's because we're miserable.
Yeah. But I mean, you've also sort of got the opposite approach to many old people I know, and I'm thinking within my family and my wife's family, which is what's become quite fashionable is this whole death clearing thing, which is a Scandinavian idea of people just getting rid of stuff.
Yeah.
Every time I go to my parents now, there's boxes of stuff that, they say, well, do you want this? And I go, well, why are you getting rid of it now? It's like, we'll sort out things when you're dead and gone.
Well, they're trying to save you from that.
Maybe, but it does mean that their life becomes very, very simple as they go on.
But that may be helpful, because I often think, my husband is a shopaholic. He can't stop buying stuff, and he buys lovely stuff, and he's very good at it. But my heart sometimes sinks, because I think, I can't wear that many shirts. Because he buys all my clothes and everything, and he'll come back.
He buys your clothes?
He buys all my clothes.
Oh.
Yeah. And jackets and everything. And I think I can't, not only have not got room on the rail for them, but I haven't got days in the week to wear them. So I'm very lucky, because he...
Is that because he came from fashion?
Yes.
So you've deferred to him on that?
Well,
or were you never very interested in buying clothes?
I could never bear shopping. I've always liked clothes, and I've always liked colour, but what would mitigate against me bothering is that I don't like shops. And it's the worst thing in the world to go into a shop and find 50 jackets you don't want, and not one you do. It's so depressing, and it's a waste of your life. John loves all that, and he'll trawl through the internet, and he's been years in the fashion business, so he can trawl a shop very, very fast, whereas I get lost in things I don't want.
You seem to be accumulating still quite a lot.
Yes,
you've done your house relatively recently.
Yeah. Yeah. But
You're still buying things.
I've been doing some death clearing too, though.
You have?
Well, yes, a bit, because when you move house, you think this is the opportunity to get rid of a lot of stuff. And we did, in a sense, we downsized a lot. We happened to then go and start building barns and places for the children to stay and so on. So we've been building up again. But I actually did a huge clear out 4 years ago. And I still do. I do. I have a friend who she has a sort of every couple of months she does a charity auction or charity sale, and she absolutely loves me because she gets lots of cast off bake-off clothes and cast off my clothes and necklaces and lots of stuff. But I do have too much stuff.
What is your advice for old people who want to still be able to easily communicate and be friends with other generations? Because I think that's one thing, again, that a lot of old people struggle with. You can be a great grandparent and have that relationship when children are very young. But when you're dealing with adults, there are so many differences.
Do you know, I think this is one of the things we've really lost, that society has lost, this intergenerational thing. I do think it's hugely helpful if you can make friends with your children, not just your grandchildren, but your children. I know that if I have my children come to dinner with my friends, they absolutely love it. Both of them love it. They don't necessarily want to talk to me, but they're interested in my friends, and my friends are very interested in them because they're younger. And I think I think intergenerational. I love intergenerational parties, for example. We have lots of parties where one of John's mad purchases is he can't stop buying small toys for children that are basically dangerous toys, little motorbikes or little quad bikes or little tractors. And they all go like the clappers, and they're all real, and they have to wear body armour and a helmet.
They're all a parent's nightmare.
Yes. And so parents can't bear to look, but they absolutely love it, and they go roaring around the garden, and they're quite careful. And his point is that it's better to teach a 4-year-old to ride a bike than an 18-year-old, because at 18 they're really dangerous. If they're a really good rider at 4 and they keep riding all the time, they won't be showing off at 16.
Did you grow up with that kind of intergenerational conversation and mixing?
Yes.
Is that how you were raised?
Yes, yes. I think we had much more intergenerational stuff going on, but mainly because families lived closer to each other. And so my uncles and and aunts would come and their children. And yeah, I think we did have more intergenerational, but I don't know what we can do about it because modern life sort of prevents it, doesn't it? Are you friends with your children's
Friends. Yes. I mean, my children are sort of 18, 20. So yeah, we're at the stage where we can get to know them a bit. And I grew up similarly with everybody around the dining table of all ages, treated pretty equally and expected to dive in on the political chat and whatever it was we were talking about. So yeah, and I suppose that's an Indian thing as well to some degree.
That's very nice, yeah. That is
But I do think it's that separate. We talk about loneliness a lot when it comes to old people, and I think something happens that separates the generations. Values are different, interests are different. Just the style of chat and conversation is different. And if you haven't, you're part of popular culture, and so it's easy for you, I suppose, to keep up with the way everything is. Not all old people find that it is that easy.
Yeah, no, I do have. I agree. I'm lucky in access, but I've got quite a few friends who are my children's age. Certainly nieces, 3 girls who are all nieces, and I'm close to all of them. And so they're now close to John, and we do mix the ages, but not enough. And I think for old people, not a lot of old people, the only contact they get with younger people is their children and the nurse in the home, who will be 18 and not speak very good English.
I mean, the issue, it brings us to the issue that you've become also very closely associated with, which is assisted dying, which is sort of surprising for somebody who clearly loves life so much, but that again comes from personal experience.
Yes, I mean, I'm in favour of assisted dying, simply for compassionate reasons. I think there are some time that for some people, and they are few, they're not many, but there are people, there are about 7,000 a year in NHS hospitals dying a miserable death, and they want to die, but they can't because it's against the law to anybody to help them. And it's illogical anyway, because it's perfectly legal to commit suicide, but it's not legal to help anybody commit suicide. So you're not allowed to help somebody commit suicide. And if they want to, they're having to do it entirely on their own without nobody holding their hand, nobody helping them or anything. It has to be a really desperate suicide. So I'm in favour of assisted dying. I think the people who are opposed to assisted dying, and my MP son, Daniel, is one of them.
Danny Kruger, we should say, for people who haven't made that connection. Yes.
Sorry, Danny Kruger. His argument is that it will be too easy for vulnerable people to be made to feel that somehow they ought to opt for assisted dying in order to give up their bed to some more worthy person who will, and that old people might be somehow shuffled out of life unwillingly. But there's no evidence of this from countries that have assisted dying. And there have been many studies, including one by the House of Commons, who sent delegates to look. And they came back saying there's no evidence of coercion. And there's no evidence of the slippery slope, which is their other great fear, that the law will be passed very narrowly for just, let's say, people who are within 6 months of dying, who are mentally competent, so you wouldn't be able to do it if you were mentally ill, and so on. So quite narrowly, and then once it's through, it'll get widened by amendments. Well, that hasn't happened anywhere else either, anywhere, and none of the countries that have it, and there are lots, there are about 30 or 40 now. None of them have. There's never been an attempt to repeal the law. So
what did you make of the way the private members bill that has just fallen, sort of went through? Because that debate was really interesting to watch, in that, it started off with sort of lots of people backing it, and lots of high-profile people like Danny explaining their opposition, but then people also turned, and people who had supported it then decided, oh, actually, this is a bit too controversial.
Quite a lot of people thought it was the wrong bill. They supported the idea in principle, but thought that the bill was flawed, which is fair enough. And that was an intelligent debate. But what happened in the House of Lords was absolutely disgraceful. I mean, a handful of lords who, frankly, I regard as completely bigoted, proposed nearly 2,000 amendments, well over 1,000 amendments. I forget exactly how many, which was a record by far for any bill. Has never had that many amendments. And they were deliberately there. Their whole plot and plan was to make sure that the bill would run out of time and therefore it would fall, because that what happens. I mean, this is the way Parliament works. If a bill can't be debated in the time allotted to it, it falls, and then you're back to square one again. And that's what they did, and they did it deliberately. It was totally cynical. The House of Lords is meant to be there to scrutinise bills and to offer suggestions for improvement. They are meant to improve a bill, but by the time it comes to the Lords, it's already been passed by the House of Commons. The House of Commons had voted it through, expected it to pass, and this 6 Lords scuppered it deliberately, cynically.
Did you wish you had been there?
Yeah.
You had wanted at one point to be in the Lords, hadn't you? A long time
when
ago.
I was much younger, I thought if I could only get into the House of Lords, I could change this and I could change that and I could do this. But that never happened. But I would have liked to be there just to vent my rage. In fact, interestingly, there were a lot of Lords who were opposed to the bill on principle, but they were indignant at what those other Lords were doing to sink it, because they thought it was denying them a vote. They wanted it to be debated, and they wanted a democratic solution. I mean, this is not democracy. It's not how the Lords is meant to work. And what will happen, of course, it just means a delay, because nobody's going to give up. It'll come back in the next Parliament, and probably if the Lords try to block it again, they'll invoke the Parliament Act, which is a bit complicated to explain, but basically the Parliament Act will prevent the House of Lords scuppering a bill if the Commons want to see it passed. I mean, after all, the House of Commons are elected MPs. The House of Lords are unelected.
I mean, how do you feel about this personally, if you were to get to the point, heaven forbid, that you were terribly ill or whatever it is, knowing that your son, I don't know how your daughter or any of the others feel about it, and maybe that's private, but knowing that he is so publicly against it, how do you feel about yourself?
I'm not worried about it at all. I mean, first of all,
you would do it.
If I wanted to do it, if I needed to, I would be able to do it, and my husband would help me, I'm sure. But I think the interesting thing is that, Daniel and I made a film together about this for Channel 4. And we went to America and Canada to have a look at how it works in practice. And interestingly, we both came back feeling what we had seen had supported our case. We didn't shift at all, really. I mean, I did feel I understood more his side of things, and I think he became more sympathetic to my compassion arguments. And he did end up saying, look, if it's legal and you want to do it, I will hold your hand. So he would be there. So,
he did say that, right?
Yeah. He wouldn't approve of it, but because I wanted it, he would do it.
The joys of old age are your sort of penultimate chapter in this. What are the key joys of getting old that people need to recognise that they perhaps don't?
Well, no, I think they're quite small in a way, but they're all pervasive. And we've talked about it a bit. I think the chief joy is not caring what people think.
But you do, because you also say you don't like being rude.
No, I
people,
don't.
And a lot of old people don't care about being rude, but you do.
No, but that's a long a lifetime of being taught not to be rude. So I find it difficult to be rude. But I don't mind. I don't really mind if people disagree with me. I don't. It doesn't. When you're young, you spend a lot of time worrying about what people will think. I mean, I do sometimes look at myself in the mirror and think, honestly, this is too much. You've got You've got orange earrings the size of tennis balls on your ears. You've got these ridiculous glasses, and you've got, and you're wearing a, zigzag dress.
So you do care.
So I say that, but then I think, bloody hell, I like it, so I'm going to do it.
So you're doing it for you,
I do
rather
it for
than
me. Yeah, exactly.
rather than
Yes.
the approval.
And then there are other minor joys, which are a complete joy. And one of them that I had never realized was such a joy is having a kip in the afternoon. It's just lovely. Prue Snooze, it's called. And in fact, the joke is that when we're filming, we have this little show called Prue Leith's Cotswold Kitchen, which is on ITV. And it's really... I love that show because I get to control everything. I get to decide what we're going to cook. I get to choose the guests who come on it, and it's all filmed in my own kitchen. And it's just my idea of heaven because I'm such a control freak. But the joy of it, one of the joys of it, is that around about 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm really tired. Old lady, I get tired. And then I go to sleep for an hour, and so does everybody else. It says Prue Snooze on the call sheet, 2 p.m. to 3 p.m.
And everybody does it.
Everybody has to be quiet because the kitchen is underneath my bedroom, so I'm asleep up there. Everybody has to shut up. And, they love it because they walk around the garden or they text their girlfriends. And the crew actually love having an hour off in the middle of the day.
I mean, the thing I think I've been too blushing to ask you really about as well is about love. But the show has clearly made your husband a star as well,
Yeah.
the new show. And again, I think that's something you're very unusual in that you've done it later on in life and you talk about it very openly.
Yeah.
Again, I mean, are there any... I know this wasn't written as a sort of a self-help book, but what would you say to other people about who kind of think, well, that's not for me at my age?
You mean love?
Yeah.
Well, if they don't want it, for God's sake, don't have it. Nothing could be worse than the idea of having to force yourself to pretend to be keen on somebody when you're not. But
What are they missing out on?
I think, again, maybe it's luck or pheromones or whatever it is. But I met John when I was 70, and what did surprise me was it felt just like being 17. You start worrying about will he text you. You start composing a text and thinking, well, I can't send that, I better not, and then deleting it and then trying again and thinking, why doesn't he ring up? What's the matter with the guy? It's so crazy, so crazy. And we were together for 5 years before and it's just an old-fashioned thing, but I was still waiting for him to pop the question. And I kept thinking, I'm a grown-up, liberated woman. Why don't I just ask him? And I think, well, I couldn't bear to because he might say no. And then I'd be really unhappy. At least if he's not said, will you marry me? And I have not said anything, there's still a good chance he will. And he did. It took a while.
Well, I'm very pleased for you. Thank you very much indeed, Prue Leith, for coming in and talking to us about being old and learning to love it. I think you're on a curve. I think there's going to be quite a lot in this.
Well, is it an upward
world.
curve? That's what you need to know.
Yes.
Right, good.
I think so. I think you're probably at the beginning of an upward curve.
Well, I'm really happy and I'm very grateful. I know I don't want to. I just know that I can sound really smug, and I don't want to be smug.
No, I don't think people think of you as smug. They think of you as successful and impressive, and very nice. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
And that's it for Ways to Change the World. You can watch these interviews on the Channel 4 News YouTube channel. Until next time, bye-bye.